Welcome back to EICMA. We're still here covering all the best bikes from the show, the biggest and best motorcycle show, I think, on the planet. We're here at Royal Enfield. We're looking at the Super Meteor 650, but before we get stuck into that, look at some of these beautiful customs. This is a 650 twin in a sort of scrambler package. Maybe that's a sign of things to come. I'd love to see a production version of that bike. I have no idea what this is, mate, but looks very cool. Love it. Doesn't look that comfortable though. Look at that saddle, absolutely minimal, so probably that one won't come into production. But I wanted to start this video by looking at the Meteor 350 over here. This is a bike I reviewed last year. It's really good at what it does. It's a nice little bike, very affordable, and you get a lot for your money. But I do think when you get up to sort of the cruising distance and cruising type speeds, it's got a couple of little shortcomings that I think the 650 certainly addresses. So let's go and take a look at it and I'll tell you all about it. So yeah, here we are with the Meteor 650, Super Meteor should I say, very busy part of the stand. There are certain bikes that are getting a lot of interest at the show and this is definitely one of them, and you can see why. It's a beautiful looking machine and it'll probably be quite aggressively priced, so something that punters here can realistically own, but it looks very classy indeed. But the key thing for me, I think, is this is a much bigger, more substantial bike than the regular Meteor 350. So it's quite a lot longer, quite a lot more weighty as well. This is 240 kilograms. So I think it's about 50 kilograms heavier than the 350. Now that might not always sound desirable, but I think when you're doing that sort of cruising work and you're riding in a straight line on the motorway, you want something with a bit of substance to it that's gonna soak up the bumps and iron out some of the chatter in the road. And I think a bigger bike like this is gonna feel more suited to that style of riding. The other thing as well is the riding position. So you can see that it's a lower bike. The Meteor 350 is, I think, 765mm in the seat, and it's got mid-position foot controls, which makes it feel a little bit like a hybrid between a naked bike and a cruiser. But this is a full-on cruiser riding position. Look just how far forward these foot pegs are. They're right at the front there, and then it's 740mm in the seat, so much lower, and you've got nice wide swept up bars. So I sat on one earlier and the riding position is much more what you'd expect for a cruiser. There's also some nice little accessories like floorboards over here, so you can really take it in whatever direction you want to. And yeah, that's thanks to the all new chassis, and you'll see some nice components here. So we've got a 43mm chunky upside down fork. Look at this beautiful metalwork here. We've got the bottom yokes, top yokes there, and these headlight brackets. It really does have a nice look to the front end. Non-adjustable, the fork. You've got preload adjustable twin shocks at the rear, so that's great if you do want to take a passenger or luggage. There's some hard cases on some of the bikes here, but what I think these forks do add is a little bit of a beefy look to the front end. It looks quite cool. They released some kind of concept sketches a while back, and some of that exciting look has been transferred over because they put a little bit of extra finish in the front end there. Braking wise, we've just got a single disc at the front here. The brakes are from Bibre, which is the budget sub-brand of Brembo, so they should be decent, but it's just a single two-pot caliper at the front. Probably not going to be masses of braking power, and it is a relatively weighty bike at 240 kilograms, but it's a cruiser. You know, you're not going to be barreling into corners at full tilt. This is a bike that's meant for easy chilled out riding, and so probably the braking power should be enough. And also the brake at the rear, that's a two-pot as well and quite substantial. So it's a little bit of that American style braking setup where you bias a little bit more towards the rear and you use a bit of both to get the bike to stop. But yeah, much more like the size of bike that I think you'd expect for a cruiser, much more appropriate dimensions. But the other big change is the engine, and that is where I think the Meteor 350 really does come up a little bit short. It's great for around town, that little 350 single. It's got about 20 horsepower, 27 newton meters of peak torque, so there's enough punch there to get away from the traffic, and it's super economical. It barely uses any fuel at all. That's great if you're commuting around town, but as soon as you hit the open road, A roads and that sort of thing, and you get up to 60 miles per hour, it does start to feel quite underpowered, and when you twist the throttle, it takes a little bit of time to pick up, and if you're planning overtaking or anything like that, you really have to make sure you've got enough time to do it. Much more appropriate for this style of bike, I think, is the 650 twin. It's the engine that you'll also find in the Interceptor 650, the Continental GT, and I think it's a really sweet engine. It's not massively powerful, about 40 odd horsepower, 50 odd newton meters of peak torque, but it's got a lovely character to it. It's air cooled, it's got that 270-degree crank, which gives it a nice sound and feel, and I think it's just enough power. It's a really distinct difference between riding something that's 20-ish horsepower to something that's 45, I think 46. And it's going to be a much better bike to ride if you do motorway work. There's a lot more grunt there. And also, if you want to go 2-up and do some touring and put some luggage on, there's enough to do that as well. It's probably not going to feel super sprightly if it's fully loaded, but I think it's just about enough. On top of that, you've got some nice other features. It's a 15.7 litre fuel tank as opposed to 13.7 on something like the Interceptor. So a little bit more distance available if you so wish to do that kind of thing. In the cockpit, we've got that nice analog clock, and also you get the Tripper navigation pod, so you can pair that with your phone and it will give you turn-by-turn directions on the dash there. So nice techie features. Love this cockpit, really nicely done. I like the grips and the switchgear. It's got a nice feel to it. Span adjustable clutch and brake levers there, so really does feel nice. And price-wise, you got to expect this bike to be pretty aggressive. So the Interceptor and the Continental GT that use the same engine, they're between 6.5 and 7 grand, depending on which color you choose. So I'd expect this bike, you know, it's a little bigger, more substantial, more metal to it. So I think it'll be at the top end of that, more like the 7 grand side of things. But still, there's not a lot of competition for a 650 cruiser at that price point. The only things that spring to mind are the Rebel 500 from Honda. That's similar in performance output, a little bit cheaper, and maybe the Vulcan from Kawasaki, the 650 Vulcan, again, quite modern looking. This, I think out of those bikes, is easily the most desirable. It's got that nice old school look. There's a bit of attention gone into the detailing, and also both those bikes get a 180-degree crank, so they sound like absolute tractors, whereas this is a very nice sounding engine, and it's got that V-twin vibe that you'd expect from a cruiser-style bike. So for me, this looks like it's going to be a massive hit. I'd be very surprised if they don't shift absolutely buttloads of these. As always though, I'd love to know what you think of it. Down in the comments below, let me know what your pick would be. Would you go for this or something like a Rebel 500? And if you want to watch all of the latest new bikes from EICMA here, we've got a playlist. I'm going to stick it on screen now. Click that, you'll see all the videos we've published so far. And we've got plenty more bikes coming over the next day or two, so keep an eye on it. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.